All right, ready to dive in. We're cracking open that report you shared, the Wenn Algorithmen für uns entscheiden one, about AI's impact, specifically on Switzerland.
Yeah, it's dense, but
it's a bit.
Really gets into it.
So we're doing the heavy lifting, boiling it down to what you need to know.
Right, cut through the noise.
Exactly, because this whole AI thing, it's like, well, just the other day I was even.
And the report, what I find interesting is it acknowledges that buzz, you know?
Oh, totally.
It points out how much public interest has exploded since, 2016-ish?
It's everywhere you turn now.
And you probably feel that too. It's not just us.
Absolutely. It's like AI went from like science fiction to every headline to
daily conversation almost.
Yes. And here's where the report gets smart. I think they skipped the whole super intelligent AI debate.
Yeah, they sidestepped that completely.
Which is honestly a relief.
It's deliberate, and I think it's wise.
Because let's be real, we've all seen those movies. We
get it, the robots taking over, but
this is about what's happening now.
Exactly. The practical AI, how it's already shaping Swiss society.
No killer robots, but still high stakes.
Absolutely. This is about work, education, how we even consume information. It's
real world stuff impacting us now.
But before we get into all that,
yeah, we gotta define AI even.
That's a good point. Because
I thought I kind of knew, but this report's breakdown, it made me think.
It's more nuanced than just can a machine think, right?
Way more.
It breaks it into 4 categories based on how we even measure intelligence.
Okay, I am intrigued. Break it down for us.
So you've got systems designed to think like us versus those acting towards a specific outcome.
So like mimicking us versus achieving a goal.
And then within that, whether it's trying to be human-like or purely rational.
So it's not just what it does, but the how that determines intelligence.
That's the key, because we tend to, equate human-like thinking with intelligence automatically.
Right, like if it talks like us, it must think like us.
But what about a system that, say, analyzes the stock market flawlessly, but can't hold a conversation?
Interesting. Is that not intelligence then, even if it's not how we do it?
Exactly. It challenges our assumptions.
Love it when that happens. So it all comes down to how these different types of AI are actually showing up in our lives.
Right. And the report, they get into the nitty-gritty there. 5 key areas.
Okay, hit me with it.
Work, education, then there's consumer behavior, how AI is playing out in the media landscape, and even...
Whoa, hold on. There's 5.
And then government and law, they're lumped together.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It's a big report. But it's all about right now, not some distant future.
Okay, so let's take these one by one, starting with work.
Makes sense.
I mean, that's the one everyone's worried about, right? Robots coming for our jobs.
Right, and the report doesn't sugarcoat it. They acknowledge those fears, especially about job displacement.
Yeah, you can't ignore that.
But they take a more, I guess you'd say, proactive approach, not just doom and gloom.
So, how do we manage this shift rather than if it's happening or not?
Exactly. And they highlight how AI could create new jobs, too, not just eliminate.
Okay, that's something.
And there's a big emphasis on retraining, upskilling the workforce.
Right, because what we need now might not be what those AI are doing later.
And this is interesting. They even suggest AI could lead to shorter working hours overall.
But really?
Due to increased productivity, you'd theoretically need to work less.
Sign me up for that.
Right.
Though I'd probably just fill the time with more hobbies, knowing me.
Likely.
Okay, but on that note of AI's potential, what about education? That's going to be huge.
Oh, definitely. And it's particularly relevant, I think, to your audience being in Switzerland.
Because we're always trying to stay ahead, education-wise.
Exactly. And the report highlights how AI can personalize learning, like tailoring it to individual students.
Oh, that's cool. No more one-size-fits-all lessons.
Right. It's about catering to each student's needs and pace.
And I can also see where that gets tricky with, data privacy concerns.
You're already thinking ahead, which is good, because the report stresses that heavily.
I figured. It's Switzerland. We're kind of known for that.
They call for clear guidelines, safeguards, especially for all the data AI could gather on students.
Yeah, kids' data, that's got to be handled super carefully.
It's about finding that balance, the benefits of personalized learning, but without compromising privacy.
Right, because it's powerful, but so is protecting that information.
And speaking of powerful influences, the report also gets into AI and the media.
Oh, yeah, that whole thing with echo chambers and filter bubbles, it's
a minefield out there, and the report argues AI is both helping and hurting.
How so?
Well, it's changing how news is chosen for us, presented to us, right?
Like those personalized news feeds, you see it everywhere.
But the downside is we end up only seeing what the algorithms think we want to see.
Which isn't always what we need to see or what's actually accurate.
Exactly. And the report ties that directly to the rise of filter bubbles, misinformation spreading faster.
Because you're only seeing stuff that confirms your existing biases.
And it gets even wilder when you factor in AI being used to create fake content, like deepfakes.
Ugh, it's hard enough to tell what's real anymore.
It's blurring the lines, and consumers really need to be extra vigilant, do their own research.
Speaking of consumers, what about how AI is shaping our everyday choices, not just the news?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting, because the report digs into manipulation.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like how those personalized recommendations, while convenient, can also be used to steer our behavior.
Oh, 100%. I've fallen for that. You might also next thing I know, I've bought something I don't need.
Right. And then there's the privacy violations, data being collected without us fully knowing how it's used.
I was like, we're the product, not the customer.
And then the report uses this term, might be new to you, data oligopolies.
Data what now? Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
So an oligopoly, it's when a few companies control most of a market. Right?
Okay, I'm with you.
Data oligopoly, it's the same, but with information, a handful of companies hoarding all our data.
And because they have it all, they control how it's used, what they do with it.
Exactly, which gives them huge power. They can influence markets, our decisions, even stifle competition.
So it's not just about me buying those shoes they recommended. It's bigger than that.
It's about who holds the power in an increasingly data-driven world.
All right. That is kind of unsettling, not gonna lie.
It's worth thinking about for sure.
And it's not just shopping, right? You said the report also looks at government and law.
Right, where AI is being used to inform decisions that have, real impact.
Okay, yeah, that's way more serious than what kind of coffee machine I should buy.
And it raises a whole other set of questions about fairness, transparency, even bias in the algorithms.
Oh, because if they're using biased data, then the AI's decisions are going to be biased too.
Exactly. And that's something the report digs into, the ethical considerations of AI in these fields.
So it's not just about if AI can do something, but should it? And how do we make sure it's done right?
And that's where things get really complex, because we're still figuring that out.
I imagine so, especially when you're talking about things that impact people's lives in such a big way.
Exactly. It's not just theoretical anymore. It's having real-world consequences.
So, knowing all this, how is Switzerland approaching AI in these high-stakes areas? Because we're usually pretty careful, right?
Right. And the report, it seems to back that up, suggesting Switzerland's being more cautious than some.
Okay, so not just diving in headfirst.
More like taking a measured approach, particularly in government, using AI more slowly.
Makes sense. Got to be sure it's the right tool for the job and used ethically.
Exactly. And they point to a higher emphasis on human oversight here.
Which tracks, right? Data privacy, individual rights, those are big deals in Switzerland.
Core values. And the report highlights how those could actually, counterbalance some AI risks.
Oh, interesting. So our values become a kind of safeguard against going too far.
Precisely. It's not just about the tech, but the principles we apply to it.
Right, because just because we can do something with AI doesn't mean we should, right?
Exactly, and that's where the report's recommendations come in.
Okay, so how do we navigate this responsibly? Give us the highlights.
One big one is this idea of the human in the loop, keeping humans in control.
So AI is a tool, not the decision maker, especially for things that really impact people.
Exactly, like healthcare, law enforcement, those critical areas.
Where the stakes are high, yeah, you don't want a glitch deciding someone's fate.
Right, and that ties into another recommendation, transparency.
Oh, being able to see what's going on under the hood, so to speak.
Not just what decisions the AI makes, but how it gets there.
Which is tricky, right? Because you said sometimes even the creators don't fully get it.
The black box problem, it's real, and the report acknowledges that.
So we can't expect 100% transparency overnight, but it's got to be the goal.
It's about striving for it, being as open as possible, especially when people's lives are affected.
All right, because if we don't understand it, how can we trust it, let alone hold it accountable?
And that accountability is crucial. The report stresses that repeatedly.
Makes sense. Anything else that stood out to you, recommendation-wise?
There's one more, and I think it'll resonate with you, given, everything we've discussed.
Hit me with it.
They propose something called a data rights repository.
Ooh, data rights. Now you're speaking my language. Tell me more.
So imagine a system where individuals have way more control over their data, how companies use it.
Okay, I'm picturing instead of those endless terms and conditions nobody reads.
You get to specify exactly what they can and cannot do with your info.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, I get to set the boundaries, not just take it or leave it with a company.
It's about putting the power back in the hands of the individual.
Very Swiss, that whole emphasis on individual rights.
And the report argues it's something worth exploring, especially as AI advances. Data becomes even more valuable.
It's almost like the more powerful these systems get, the more we need to protect ourselves, right?
Exactly. And this repository idea, it's just one potential solution, but it's sparking conversation.
Well, I'm all for sparking conversation, especially around this stuff. It's too important to ignore.
Absolutely. And that's what I appreciate about this report. It's starting those discussions here in Switzerland.
And honestly, I feel like we've only scratched the surface today. There's so much more to unpack.
Oh, definitely. This is a topic we'll be grappling with for years to come.
But for now, at least we've given our listeners a starting point, something to think about.
A foundation, and hopefully some questions they can ask themselves about AI's role in their own lives.
Exactly. Because it's not just coming, it's already here, shaping our world in ways we're just beginning to understand.
And that's both exciting and a bit daunting, isn't it?
Totally. But hey, that's what these deep dives are for, to tackle the big stuff head on.
Couldn't agree more.
So with that, another deep dive done and dusted. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Until next time.